I'm Lisa, and stepping into that party was the last place I thought my world would turn. There I stood beside Rachel, anticipating some laughter and free drinks. It all changed with a glance from James, his easy smile and hands casually tucked into his jeans. "Who's that?" I nudged Rachel, eyeing him. "That's James," she half shouted over the music. "Went to college with him. Real chill guy. You want to meet him?" "Sure," I shrugged. New faces meant new stories, but I wasn't prepared for the instant connection. James had a way of talking as if I were the only person in the room, and those green eyes didn't hurt either. "So, you like the Rolling Stones?" He caught me eyeing his t-shirt. Vintage band tees were everywhere, but I meant it when I said only someone who really digs good music would wear Mick Jagger on their chest. He laughed. "Are you calling me out or complimenting me?" "Guess you'll never know," I teased back. By the end of the night, we were inseparable, discussing everything from our love for old-school rock to names for our future pets. James got my number and didn't wait 3 days to call. The next morning, we were deep in the what of tomorrow, talking about rings and forever. But forever comes with its own baggage. Meeting the parents was on the horizon, and the icy reception at the dinner table was unexpected. Margaret, James's mom, broke the so-called ice with a sharp question about my job at the hospital. It wasn't polite interest, but a harder appraisal. "Yeah, the county hospital up north," I replied confidently. "How much do they pay you for that?" Her eyes were sharp, her tone sharper. James shot me a look, but I decided to be upfront. "Well, James does more than get by," she said, interrupting. "So, about this marriage." It was a punch to the gut. I didn't care about money, but the financial discussion had begun. His dad chimed in, and the tone for our commitment was set, tough, not all sunshine and romance. But it was real, and real was something I could work with. Our wedding was simple, fitting in a matchbox. No fanfare, just him, me, and a couple of signatures. In the beginning, we were a team, tackling life from our small joint command center, his old house. We set up a system, half on everything, shared chores, and even cooking together. There was comfort in the routine, in knowing what to expect when we got home. But reality is a tough customer. 4 months down the line, the teamwork was taking hits. Excuses rolled in, bad days stringing together like a lousy pearl necklace. What was meant to be equal started to weigh heavy on my side. The shared life felt more like a solo gig. 2 weeks of slugging it out on my own, and I finally snapped. I wasn't one to make a fuss, but living like this was unbearable. I confronted James, who walked in with headphones on, oblivious to the mounting tension. "James," I blurted out, unable to hide the annoyance in my tone. "What happened to sharing the load?" He looked at me, genuinely confused or exceptionally skilled at acting. "What are you on about, Lisa?" he asked, pulling off his headphones. "I spent nearly an hour scraping your dried-up yogurt off the coffee table this morning." "It's like living with a toddler," I complained. He just shrugged, a nonchalant gesture as if he didn't have a care in the world. "Chill out, will you? It's just a bit of a mess." "A bit of mess?" I called it quits. I stopped picking up his dirty socks, stopped doing his laundry. It was petty, but I was at my breaking point. Of course, that's when Margaret, his mother, decided to pop in unannounced. The perfect storm. "Look at this place," she said, her nose crinkling as if she found a rotten egg. I tried to keep cool, offered her tea, but she was on the warpath. "James, this is no way for a man to live," she said sternly, eyes fixed on me. "I didn't raise you to be living in a pigsty." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Margaret, it's a 2-person job, and I've been doing it solo." "I'm not his maid. You're his wife," I retorted. "A wife keeps a clean home?" She snapped back, missing the irony that I too had a full-time job. I felt my face flush with anger. "And what does a husband do, Margaret?" I snapped back. "He's the breadwinner," she hollered back, missing the irony again that I too contributed financially. Margaret stormed out, slamming the door, leaving me and James in the rubble of our domestic battlefield. James, knocked down a notch at work, came home that day, dumped his keys like they were made of lead. "They're cutting back," he said, the words hanging heavy. I'm off the management track. Just like that, he decided he wouldn't help with the bills anymore. Suddenly, it was all on me. I banged pots and pans like they owed me money. "Why are you making such a racket?" he asked, picking at his beer label. "Someone's got to pay for those beers," I snapped, "and keep this place looking half decent." The ensuing conversation was like a round in the ring. "You expect me to chip in after a day like today?" he shot back. "Yeah, James," I said, not backing down. "Because I had a cakewalk of a day, right?" He had no comeback for that. Just took another swig. "We had a deal. We share this, remember?" I said, standing in front of the blaring TV. "A deal doesn't hold when things go south," he said, not even looking at me. I stood in front of the screen. "So, what? I'm supposed to just smile and nod and keep the house like some 1950s sitcom, Mom?" I glared at him. "You wanted a partnership. Here it is. This is life. Deal with it," he said, thick and toxic words hanging in the air. Ignoring the problem wasn't going to make it vanish. "We're supposed to be in this together, and that means not ditching out when it gets tough," I argued. "I didn't ditch out the job, did I?" he muttered, barely audible over the TV noise. I turned off the TV. "We'll see how long we last, if this is how it's going to be," I said, and silence filled the room, as thick as the dirt I'd been cleaning all day. He looked away. I stormed off to bed that night. No more words, none that mattered anyhow. They were all bitter, spat out with more hurt than real heart, but they stuck with me like thorns in my side. The tension in the house was like walking into a wall of ice. Barely a word was passed between us without a sharp edge. James had taken to eating his meals alone, delivered by Margaret with a thud at our door, the plastic containers hitting the wood like the gavel of a judge passing sentence. "So, what are we having tonight?" I asked poker-faced as James marched past me, Margaret's cooking in hand. "Does it matter?" He barely glanced my way. "It's not like you're eating." It was true. I didn't have the stomach for food, not for what was in those containers. It was more than lasagna or stew. It was a heavy dose of rejection served up by Margaret, seeping into every room of the house. Then Granny B called, cheerful and active. I could almost smell her lavender perfume through the phone. A visit from Granny could turn a place upside down. And that's what I sorely needed, a gust of fresh air. "I'm packing my bags, baby girl," she chuckled. But I heard the steel underneath, a resilience that had gotten her through tougher times than this. "I need to see your life." I broached the subject over dinner, a silent affair with the clinking of cutlery replacing conversation. "Granny B wants to visit," I said, dropping the bomb without preamble. James paused mid-bite, his eyes hardening. "Here, stay with us," I nodded, gripping my fork like a lifeline. He shook his head, speaking with his mouth full, forgetting manners existed. "No chance. Margaret wouldn't like it. Since when do we schedule our life around your mother?" The boldness of my words surprised even me. Margaret's voice sliced through from the doorway. "Since it's our house, girl. You just live here." The unfairness choked me like a noose. "Your son and I are supposed to be building a life together, Margaret." She snorted. "A life? You called us a life. Look at you two." "I bring him food because someone needs to take care of my boy." James stood up, his chair scraping back like a scream. "And that's how it's going to be. No visits, no changes. It's settled." I looked between them, the mother and son, feeling the outsider tag slapping against my chest. "It's settled because you say so. What about what I want, what I need?" "You need to understand that things are the way they are." James shot back, red flushing his cheeks. "My house, my rules." The ache spread from my heart to my fingertips, but I squared my shoulders. "It's also my home, James, or at least it's supposed to be." He had no answer, just the hard line of his jaw, telling me the conversation was over. But nothing was settled. Granny B would come, somehow. I'd make sure of it. For the first time, I wanted the battleground. If they wouldn't budge, neither would I. there was fight in me yet, and the freeze in the house would need my fire to thaw it, whether they liked it or not. For the third month in a row, James did not contribute his share to our family budget. I was carrying everything, the house, the groceries, and even his damn beer. We had a fight, the last straw. James and I stood facing each other, our words sharp enough to slice through steel. The room felt smaller as the tension grew, air thick with resentment saved up from months of silent battles and unspoken words. "I don't want you as my wife," James said, his voice dripping with finality, signaling the end of everything. It didn't come out as a shout. That might have been better. A shout I could have responded to with fury. Instead, it was a low hiss, a deflating tire's last breath, leaving behind silence that echoed louder than any scream. "I don't want to be where I'm not wanted," I countered with as much steadiness as I could muster, despite the tremor within. He didn't stop me as I started to pack my bags. Each piece of clothing folded felt like a piece of the life we'd built being tucked away, rendered insignificant. I headed to the door, my suitcase a loyal companion trailing behind me. James was still standing in the center of the chaos, the eye of the storm that had hit us over and over until we'd broken into scattered pieces beyond collection. He didn't move, didn't try to stop me. The door closed with a click, much too gentle for the ending it represented. Outside, Granny B was in her old dependable car that smelled of leather and peppermint. Leaning over to open the passenger door, I heaved my suitcase into the back and slid in beside her without a word. "All set, dear?" Granny asked, her eyes soft but her voice strong, a rock in a swirling sea. "Yeah, I'm set," I mumbled, buckling the seatbelt over the hollow feeling in my chest. Granny B didn't start the car right away. "Heck of a fool," she said flatly, adding an expletive that would have made a sailor blush. I choked out a strange chuckle. "Well, it's true." She finally turned the key in the ignition, the engine rumbling to life reassuringly. "You're worth 10 of him, 15 even." She backed out, and we started towards the new apartment. I didn't reply. Instead, I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window, watching the landscape blur the same way my thoughts were a jumble of memories and pain. Granny B didn't push with questions or platitudes. She just drove, every now and then muttering something under her breath that sounded suspiciously like curses aimed at James. The cozy rented apartment was in a normal neighborhood, a place where you could blend in and lick your wounds in peace. As Granny hauled my bag out of the car with surprising strength, I unlocked the door to the unknown. "Well," Granny said, clapping her hands together, "time to rebuild, kiddo. You've got a life to claim, and that sorry excuse for a man to forget." I nodded, feeling the very first flutter of something like hope in my chest. Breaking points, I realized, weren't just about endings. They were about beginnings too. Messy, painful, but real. First starts didn't erase the past, but they gave you a canvas to create something new, and maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what I needed. Granny B was sitting on my threadbare couch, her hands clasped over her knee, bouncing with what seemed like contained energy. Who knew that beneath that floral dress and the wrinkles was a woman with the heart of a Wall Street hustler? "So, you're telling me all the dough I sent you for your meds and stuff, you've been playing the market with it?" I stared at her in disbelief. Granny B chuckled and winked. "Honey, you think I'd let your hard-earned cash rot under a mattress? No way. I've been growing it bit by bit." It felt unreal. I crunched the divorce papers in my hand, knowing that what Granny B had just told me was going to flip the script in a major way. James and Margaret, the perfect couple from next door, agreed to meet us one last time, probably thinking they could offer me some friendly advice on starting over. Margaret opened the door with all fake smiles. "Well, if it isn't the soon-to-be single lady, come in. We were just talking about you." James sat at the dining table, smirking without a care in the world. "Good of you to come by. We need to talk about the neighborhood now that you'll probably be moving somewhere more, affordable." I clenched my jaw, but remembered Granny's news. "I needed this, actually, James. I won't be going anywhere," Granny B piped up. "She's got a juicy bit of news. Tell 'em, hun. I enjoyed the suspense, stretching their faces tight. Turns out, I got a little nest egg waiting for me. Granny's been smart with the money. James laughed harsh and loud. What, did you win the lottery or something, Granny P? Granny grinned, sharp as a tack. Better. I turned her spare change into a cool 2 million. The smiles fell off James and Margaret's faces like overripe fruit. 2 million. Margaret's voice came out strangled. Yep, and I don't plan to spend it on this neighborhood. My words felt heavy as I watched their painted-on warmth crumble. Granny slapped a hand on her thigh, triumphant. Ain't that something? Just when you think life's kicked you, it decides to kiss you instead. James started babbling something about how half of this money belongs to him. I burst out laughing, reminding him of the prenuptial agreement I had signed. At this moment, his mother would probably like to go back 6 months to destroy this paper. James and Margaret sat in silence, looking at us with puppy dog eyes. I couldn't help but relish the irony. We didn't linger much longer. There was nothing left to say. As we walked out, Granny B draped an arm around my shoulders. So what's first on the millionaire to-do list? She asked, squeezing me tight. First, I'm getting an ice cream, a big one with all the fixings. I said, the future suddenly bright and wide open. Granny let out a hearty laugh, the sound mingling with the promise of an unseen fortune, now seen and closer than ever. The phone rang again. I was pretty sure it was James trying his luck once more, but this time it went straight to voicemail. I had stuff to sort out and no desire to entertain that mess. I heaved a sigh, looking around my cramped apartment cluttered with memories, too many of them pinned to James, and a shadow that loomed like a bad smell. Grandma, with her sharp eyes and a non-nonsense attitude, was right as rain. Why do you even keep that thing on? Grandma gestured at the phone with a scoff, busy shuffling through a pile of real estate listings. I shrugged and tossed the phone on the couch. Guess I'm too soft, squishy as an overripe tomato, she snorted. We need to get moving. I don't want James or his mama knocking on our door trying to weasel back into our lives when we've barely shucked him off. I know, Grams. Thanks. I flashed her a grateful look. So, where to? She slapped a listing onto the kitchen table. It was circled and bold. Here, 2 bedrooms, cleaner air, away from unwanted pests. I skimmed the details. Looks decent, Grams. Any pizza joints nearby. The next day dawned fresh. We were off, the apartment ad in hand, and a skipping grandma step. The listing agent met us at the property, all smiles and slicked back hair reeking of too much aftershave. Welcome, ladies. He extended his hand right at Grandma. She eyed it like it was a dead fish, but shook it all the same. Cut to the chase, hot shot. We're not here for pleasantries. I bit back a laugh as the agent's smile twitched. Of course, of course. He quickly unlocked the door. This way, please. The place was a gem compared to where we were. Good light, clean floors, and the air didn't hold any of James's cologne. Grandma handled it like she was born in a market stall. The price dropped. Terms changed. By the time we walked out, the agent looked 2 inches shorter. The move went smooth. Neighbors were quick to say hi, a couple of them inviting us over for beers and a barbecue. They asked about my story, but I kept it simple. I was done letting my past hitch a ride. The new place shaped up nice. I continued to work as a nurse, and Grandma found her corner for knitting and gossiping with Mrs. Ham from next door, who had more sass packed in her tiny frame than anyone I'd ever met. One evening, I grabbed a pizza from the new joint, of course, and headed home. As I flipped open the box, the steam carried that cheesy aroma up, and I couldn't help but smile. So we settled in, me and Grandma, our little team, the taste of fresh starts and thick crust pizza in the air, laughter from the neighbor's yard spilling in through our open window, and a sense of peace finally making itself at home. James and his empty promises faded into the background noise, just like the buzz of the city we'd left behind. I was looking forward, and the view was pretty damn good. I am Nancy, and I have an older brother named Keith who is 7 years my senior. Keith has always been academically exceptional since childhood, consistently delivering top-notch performances. He graduated from a prestigious high school and university, making our parents immensely proud. However, the constant praise and high expectations seemed to shape his personality in an unexpected way as he grew older. After completing his education and securing a new job, Keith decided to leave our family home. During his departure, he sarcastically remarked about being unable to endure the mundane life in our house any longer. I can vividly recall the mixed emotions on our parents' faces at that moment: surprise and the hint of sadness. In the past, Keith was a cheerful and cherished member of the family. Personally, I felt a twinge of anger. I never excelled academically or in sports like my brother did. My high school wasn't super prestigious, but I valued the warmth and love within our family. Both Keith and I owe our lives to our parents' support. It saddened me that he seemed to overlook the importance of our family bonds. As a child, Keith was my hero, handling everything perfectly and caring for me. However, as I approached graduation from high school, he began questioning the need for higher education and dismissed my pursuits. When confronted by our parents, he blamed them for his changed attitude. Despite the challenges, I persevered, entering a national university and securing a job at my dream company. My parents' encouragement helped shape me into a kind-hearted person. However, my brother's life took a different turn. He was already married, and neither my parents nor I had met his wife. One day during work hours, I received an unexpected call from my mother. Worried about the unusual call, I stepped outside to answer discreetly. My mother's voice, softer than usual, revealed that my father had suddenly fallen ill. Distressed by the news, I immediately informed my supervisor, rushed to the hospital, and hoped for the best. Entering the waiting room, I was met with my mother in tears, desperately seeking comfort. Anxious, I asked, "What happened, Mom?" I anxiously sat beside my mother, struggling to comprehend how my father, who seemed perfectly fine that morning, had suddenly ended up in this condition. My words tumbled out one after another as I asked the question that refused to settle in my mind. After a brief pause, my mother quietly uttered, "Your father has been diagnosed with cancer." Time seemed to freeze as the weight of her words sank in. The surprise and anxiety within me spilled out in my voice. My mother took a deep breath and, with a tone heavy with sadness, continued, "It's stage 4. The cancer has spread to the bile duct, and they said it's hard to remove it all." Her tears flowed uncontrollably, and I struggled to find words as I listened to this devastating news. Seeking a glimmer of hope, I inquired about the next steps in treatment. My mother nodded somberly, and after a short pause, the attending physician arrived to explain the detailed condition and treatment options. The grim reality hit us as we learned that the illness had progressed more than expected, with confirmed metastasis to other parts. The doctor conveyed the significant risks of surgery and the uncertainty of success. My mother and I, holding hands, tried to come to terms with this harsh reality. The doctor's matter-of-fact words emphasized the gravity of the situation. We were faced with crucial choices: continuing with chemotherapy or opting for support in a palliative care ward. The heavy silence in the waiting room was broken only by the ticking of the clock's second hand. As tears quietly streamed down my mother's face, I pondered how to approach the situation. Despite the challenging circumstances, necessary discussions needed to take place. Realizing the importance of including my brother Keith, I suggested contacting him immediately to make a decision together. With a forced smile, my mother admitted that she had already informed Keith, but he hadn't responded. Recalling my brother's nature and past events, I had a premonition of his potential reaction. Keith tended to get upset when seeking help, avoiding tough decisions. Determined to involve the entire family in this critical decision, I persisted in calling him. After more than 10 attempts, I finally heard my brother's slightly irritated voice. "Why do you keep calling me?" he snapped. Urgently and anxiously, I explained Dad's condition, questioning why he hadn't come to the hospital despite being informed. His response lacked empathy or understanding, shaking me to the core. Unmoved by the gravity of the situation, he dismissed it as unnecessary concern, stating, "There's no point in discussing further. I'm hanging up." Stunned, I was left reeling from the exchange. I found myself in a state of bewilderment, unable to conceal my astonishment at my brother's indifference. I was aware of his lack of a sense of family bond and gratitude, but the extent of his detachment was beyond what I had anticipated. When I returned to my mother, a look of concern was evident on her face. In response to her inquiry about what happened, I explained that it seemed he was quite busy, avoiding the details. My mother sighed deeply, murmuring that it would have been comforting if Keith was here. My father, choosing to spend his final moments in a palliative care ward, quietly passed away a few months after that decision. I conveyed this somber news to my brother over the phone and provided details of the wake and funeral. However, his response was cold, stating he was too busy with work to attend, urging us to proceed without him. True to his word, he didn't appear at our father's wake or funeral. Even my mother seemed shocked by this fact, likely never imagining her son wouldn't show up for his father's funeral. Both family and acquaintances expressed surprise and disappointment at his absence. After the funeral, in a moment of quiet reflection amongst the family, my mother sighed deeply, muttering to herself that he really didn't come. I took her hand and reassured her, saying firmly, "Mom, let's not worry about him anymore. We have to let him walk his path. For now, let's cherish our memories of Dad." My mother tightly squeezed my hand in response, smiling and saying, "Thank you." Unexpectedly, the next day, my older brother appeared at the apartment where we live. His usual expression was replaced with an urgent restlessness. Without any greeting, he demanded to know, "Where is the inheritance father left behind?" Shocked by his demand, I emotionally retorted, expressing disbelief at someone who didn't even attend the funeral now making such inquiries. Visibly irritated, my brother snapped at me, saying, "The kid should stay quiet," creating a tense atmosphere. Attempting to calm the situation, my mother explained that, apart from the apartment, our father didn't leave much behind. She presented my father's passbook on the table, flipping through it to reveal that all the savings were transferred to a different account. My brother, taken aback, asked in surprise, "What is this all about?" Gently, my mother replied, "Your father instructed to move all the money to my account earlier. Also, this apartment's name has been changed, and now it's in my name." Left speechless, my brother clicked his tongue in frustration and left. Watching his departing figure, we were once again filled with admiration and gratitude for our father's foresight and his plan to protect the family. A few months later, my mother unexpectedly fell and was rushed to the hospital. The family was filled with shock and concern upon learning that she had pneumonia in a more advanced stage than initially thought. Despite feeling relieved when she was diagnosed with a minor cold at a small clinic, detailed examinations at a major hospital revealed a much more severe condition with only about 3 months to live. Hearing this news left me at a loss for words. I found it hard to believe, especially considering how healthy she appeared. Tragically, just a few days after the 3-month mark, my mother quietly passed away. The absence left behind an indescribable stillness and sorrow. Filled with guilt and grief, I questioned why I hadn't noticed sooner or taken her to a larger hospital immediately. Even after learning about my mother's pain, my brother showed no signs of coming to our house. My aunt, my mother's sister, and I handled the arrangements for the wake and the funeral. Understandably, it was a significant shock for my aunt that my brother didn't appear at our mother's last rites, just as he hadn't for our father's. Although my aunt was extremely outraged, I felt that expecting anything or saying anything to my brother was meaningless, recalling his past actions. However, a few days after the funeral, as my aunt and I were sorting out the heirlooms, my brother appeared again, accompanied by his wife, whom we were meeting for the first time. "Where's Mom's inheritance? She must have left something, right?" My brother brought up this question from the beginning. I was both shocked and dumbfounded. My aunt, equally stunned, stared at him in disbelief. The most astonishing thing was that beside my brother stood his wife, my new sister-in-law, whom neither met our eyes nor greeted us, just standing silently next to my brother. Even more shocking was that my brother did not even visit our mother's grave. Brother, please at least pay your respects to our parents. At the very least, visit Mom's grave, I said calmly. With a sneering laugh, my brother responded, "Does that even mean anything?" He quickly followed with, "By the way, how much of Mom's inheritance is left?" At that moment, May's expression changed drastically. In a voice filled with anger, contrasting with her usual warmth, she sternly admonished Keith, "How can you think of such things at a time like this? Nancy is managing the funeral on behalf of both of you, putting in all her effort. Shouldn't you act with a bit of gratitude, thinking of your parents?" Ignoring our aunt's anger, my brother responded dismissively, "Auntie, it's none of your business. Don't interfere." With these demands from my brother and sister-in-law, the atmosphere in the room became cold and tense. Behind my brother, my smiling sister-in-law said, "Of course, I remember your name, Nancy. Do you plan to keep all of your mother's inheritance for yourself?" "Sorry, but we can't allow that. This apartment is so lovely. I think it's perfect for us." I never imagined that my brother and his wife would say such things. "Why should I have to leave for the sake of both of you?" I asked, my voice quivering. While twirling her finger, my sister-in-law continued, "This apartment has just been renovated, and its location is amazing. It's close to the station, and there are plenty of shops, so we'll be living here." At the peak of my anger, I confronted my big brother, asking, "All you care about is the inheritance. What are you thinking?" Unable to hold back, I raised my voice, turning away. My brother let out a heavy sigh. Such vulgar behavior. "Do you think raising your voice solves everything? We'll be back here in 3 days. Have everything ready to move out by then." With those words, their intentions became crystal clear. A mix of my anger and sadness bubbled up, and I couldn't stop my tears from flowing. But this wasn't just a one-time event. I had to think about what to do next. Determined, I wiped my tears, and my aunt gently tapped my shoulder, handing me a letter. The delicate handwriting of my mother adorned the envelope's surface. "What's this, Auntie?" I cautiously opened the envelope, my aunt explaining, "Your mother entrusted this to me for a just-in-case scenario. She told me to give it to you at the right moment." Tears formed in her eyes as I unfolded the paper inside. My mother's beautiful handwriting filled the page. "To my precious Nancy, if you are reading this letter, it means I'm no longer in this world. I'm truly sorry for our parting," it began. A warmth filled the back of my eyes, tears beginning to flow. The letter continued, "You might have Keith visit the house concerning the inheritance, but don't worry. Everything that your father handed down to me is now yours." I was at a loss for words, unaware that my mother had thought this far ahead and prepared everything in advance. The letter expressed her apologies for leaving me alone suddenly, but mentioned she was at peace, having witnessed how much I had grown into a wonderful person. "While learning is essential, it's not everything. The kindness and compassion you learn through your interactions with people hold the most value," she wrote. Expressing pride in me, my mother stated, "Your father and I were genuinely happy to see you grow up with such a warm heart until our last days." The letter conveyed heartfelt gratitude, leaving me overwhelmed. Despite the tears blurring the words, I was determined to take in every sentiment my mother had conveyed and continued reading. She revealed that following my father's wishes, she had secretly changed the apartment's ownership to my name. "I'm sorry for using your seal without permission, but it was both your father's and my wish. Please don't be angry," she wrote. The letter encouraged me to persevere through life's ups and downs, urging me to stay strong and find happiness. The letter ended, and tears streamed down my face, wetting the paper. My aunt, standing next to me, pressed her eyes and shed tears alongside me. "Your sister truly cared about you. In her heart, you were a treasure," my aunt said gently, holding my hand. From the envelope, a bank book in my name emerged, revealing a substantial amount, likely the inheritance my mother had saved for me. A few days later, my brother and his wife showed up at the house without even knocking on the door. "It's time for you to leave, just as promised, right?" My brother sarcastically said. As I stood still, my sister-in-law became irritated, demanding, "Isn't it your duty to leave quickly?" I took a deep breath, looked them straight in the eyes, and calmly stated, "Actually, this house is now under my name." The room's atmosphere became tense. My brother and his wife looked at each other, exclaiming, "What kind of joke is this? I am the eldest son. I should inherit the house, right?" My brother said, clearly shaken. Beside him, my sister-in-law stared at me, saying, "This is the first I've heard of this." However, I had decided to state the facts. The house and the inheritance are all managed under my name, so there's nothing to divide. My brother frowned and insisted, "Then hand over half of that inheritance to us." I questioned, "But this money was left for my future and to ensure that I take care of the house. You always looked down on me, and now you're asking for money. What changed?" His face turned red, and surprisingly, my sister-in-law exclaimed, "Wait, what is this? This isn't what we were expecting." From what I gathered, my brother recently faced significant trouble at his job and was subsequently fired. Not only that, but he and his wife were moving from one day job to another, seemingly in a tight spot financially. With my revelation, their expectations were shattered, and they began bickering, placing blame on one another. Calmly, I said, "This is my house now. If you make any unnecessary fuss, I'll call the police." Trembling with anger, they reluctantly accepted my words and left. Since then, I've had no contact with them. I deliberately deleted all their contact details and began a new life in this apartment, my treasure filled with memories of my father and mother. Now I have a loving partner by my side, and we plan to build a new family in this apartment. He respects my decision and proposed that we take the first step of our new life here. Our future is bright, and I want to pass on the warm love my parents gave me to the children we will have in the future.